Hi everyone, today we're going to be looking at Bandai's RG Evangelion Unit 1. And so this is from the RG series, which is, it was actually pretty new. It was actually released in 2020. And so this differs from like the HG unit, where this is actually a more complex model. And so you're going to actually see a lot more parts on the legs and the arms, for instance. And it's actually built in a way so that if you're like twisting the arm or the legs, you have a lot of these kind of minute like armor movements, which is actually really cool. So I'm actually really excited to show you today how this set is put together. So another difference between the HG model and the RG model is that this one's actually smaller scale than the HG. So when I compared it with the Unit 00 model, the Unit 1 is about, it only goes up to maybe the chest of the Unit 00 HG model. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first thing is actually using like a wire snipper, or if you have like the plastic nippers. So you can get nippers that are specific for plastic models. And so there are two different ways to actually kind of detach the pieces. One is to actually nip very close from where the tab is connected to the piece, so that you kind of just get a clean cut. Or the other method, which is a little bit actually cleaner, would be to actually nip away where there's like the thicker portion that's connected, and then you use an X-Acto knife or like a higher grade nipper to kind of clean it in as you're kind of cutting away at the nub that's kind of still on there. And the reason for that actually has to do with when it's actually on the plastic sheet, and if you're cutting really close up to the tab, most likely you're going to get a little bit of some kind of like a white mark on where you cut. And it's actually because instead of cutting, it's actually kind of tearing or pulling the plastic part off a little bit. And so you want to make sure you have a very sharp X-Acto knife or a nipper when you're cutting these parts. So something I'm doing different now for these videos is on the top left corner, you're going to see an image from the manual, and then I'm actually showing you an arrow of which part I'm working on currently. And this is just so that you have a better understanding of what I'm doing, because I noticed that with the other plastic models, as I was putting the part, it might not be very clear exactly which part I'm working on if you're trying to follow along with the video. So I thought that this would be actually helpful to understand what you need to do. For example, here, after you insert that piece in, you have to rotate 180 degrees. So I'm trying to really help guide along if you're trying to build along with this and you're not very familiar with plastic like PLA models. Let me know in the comments if this is actually helping you kind of follow along, because it is a lot of work, and I would like to know, if it's actually helpful at all, or if I'm just wasting my time. So another really good thing about this instruction manual for this RG unit is actually that they highlight in magenta kind of the part that you need to kind of pay focus to. So as you can see here, it's showing you like where the two pieces are supposed to meet, or we're supposed to go through, by highlighting it with the magenta. It's actually easier and more accurate if you use like a tweezer to kind of apply the stickers on, because you have a little more accuracy than just using your fingers. So for this attachment part that you're going to be attaching the legs to, you're supposed to fit it through the whole of the body in an exact way. So look at the opening for the shape of the opening, and then afterwards you need to actually rotate it within its position until the two kind of rods on the end is pointing upwards towards the body. So just make sure, it took me a while to kind of get it in because it wasn't rotating as easily as I wanted to, but the instruction manual will actually give you a notice of what it's supposed to look like. So in the manual, you're going to sometimes notice these kind of magenta diamonds, and it's going to show you like numbers, and it's actually showing you like the easiest way to assemble it by actually following the steps with the 1, 2, 3, 4. And sometimes it's actually very important to put it in a certain order, or you're actually going to get stuck. So the best way to describe how to attach the body armor is that you're going to be putting on the 2 side pieces on the back side, and then the front piece is actually going to slide in front, and then you're going to connect the 2 back side pieces by putting in the tab into the hole, so you're kind of connecting it like a U shape with the 2 sides attached to the kind of V. So it actually is just very repetitive for this part until you get the kind of the crotch inlay part in. So I use Gundam markers, the black one specifically, to kind of highlight in where there's kind of engravings or little areas that are kind of, bulging out, and so that's kind of giving a little bit more shadow definition. With this RG unit, you're actually not going to do too much of like the Gundam pen or like the painting the outlines, because the way that this model was built was that instead of having like engraved markings for, let's say, like the panel looks for like a lot of the Gundam models, they're actually all separate pieces, so there's not a lot of places for you to actually mark or put in a black outline in. Just very few instances like the one that you just saw. You have 2 choices for this kind of horn piece on the headgear, and what actually happened was I ended up using the one that was all put together, and so there's 2 different ones. There's one that has the green already embedded in, and the other one is just a purple one with the green stickers that you're putting on it. But the problem with the one that was embedded with the green already was I was using it, and as I was working on the model, it snapped off, because where the green and the purple are attached, it actually becomes a weak point for that model, that eventually later on I ended up having to use the other the purple one with the green sticker, just because that one was sturdier. So you're going to see this very big difference between the HG model versus the RG here, in the sense that you see all these parts going in for the thigh and then like the calf area. The HG unit is really just like a 2 or 3 pieces that are being put together, while this one you're going to see all these intricate parts, because what happens is as you're moving it, it actually works like kind of how your muscles work on your legs, so that it's moving different parts of the armor or the skin of the Eva unit. So you're going to see all these intricate parts that actually work really well together. I actually thought it was a really great design on their part, about how like I just thought it was really cool of like how it really mimics like a muscle moving. I would like to note that you have to be careful when you're cutting off some of the parts from the pieces, and you're going to get a little warning sign of where not to nip when you're detaching the piece from the sheet, as shown in this manual image above. This part here actually kept kind of wanting to slide out, so I ended up using glue later on, so I ended up using a super glue to kind of just glue in that piece. Here's a great example of just the flexibility of like the armored pieces and how well the leg bends and shapes around. So I only recorded the right leg, but it's exactly the same step for the left leg. Just look at the manual for the part list to make sure that you're doing it in the mirrored version. There are a lot of stickers and decals that you're going to be putting on this model. Actually, I don't want to see decals because none of them are technically decals themselves. You know, just look at the part list. There's a whole separate sheet of just the stickers that you're going to be putting on. Just look at it one by one, and if it kind of gets confusing, what I actually sometimes do is I would actually mark on the paper as I'm working on the sticker so I know which one I've already completed. As with the legs, I'm only going to show how to build the right arm because the left arm is identical, it's just going to be a mirrored version. Please note the step 1 where you're putting that ring in first before you put in the upper piece through that hole. I actually made the mistake of doing that later and I was confused why it wasn't staying in. So it's actually really important that you pay attention to what it says on the manual. So this arm piece, after I was done building it, kept wanting to kind of slide out of that kind of pole. So what I actually suggest you might want to do is maybe glue the two halves of the biceps together, just so that it kind of doesn't move around. Mine actually kept wanting to slide out. So my camera actually kind of malfunctioned and it actually ended up not recording the shoulder build. It was actually pretty straightforward, as you can see from just the two kind of steps in the manual. I apologize for not being able to record that portion. So instead of using the gold sticker that will definitely slide off that knuckle, I ended up using a gold Sharpie to just color in all the knuckle parts that's supposed to have the sticker. So I didn't realize until I finished the model and a few days later where the shoulder piece just looked kind of odd. I thought that it was kind of weird that the knife you had to pull from the back of the shoulder, until I realized that I actually put the shoulder on backwards. So the green cross that you see right now is actually supposed to be facing forward, and so that kind of the green slot on the top is where you're pulling the knife out from front, not behind. So I'm just kind of warning you that from moving on, just assume that the shoulder was placed properly, but I did not realize this until after the video was done. So to describe kind of how to make this plug for the Eva unit is that you're gonna actually fit the wire through the hole on the bottom of that plug first, and then you're going to bring it up, and you're going to kind of make it into like a J shape. You know, it looks more like a hockey stick, and then you're going to fit it through that little piece there that's actually going to hold it in place. But before you do that, make sure you put the red ring in between the plug and the wire, and then once you bend it, the wire into shape, the red ring can go up and kind of close off that end of the plug. And just an FYI, that plug doesn't like staying attached to the body, so it does come out quite often. I really do like this detail that you can actually place the knife inside the shoulder pads. And I'm just kind of giving the warning again, just as a reminder that the shoulder is actually on backwards right now. Similar to the gold Sharpie, instead of putting the chrome looked kind of sticker on the edge of the knife, I decided to use just a silver Sharpie. This is an oil-based Sharpie that you can actually apply onto plastics or metals. It's kind of like you're putting on a layer of acrylic paint in a sense, but or actually more of an oil paint. And I actually thought that it actually looked nicer than putting on the sticker. And there you have it. This is the final model image of the RG Eva-01 unit from the movie Evangelion, or actually the anime series Evangelion from Bandai. And I just really love all the detail and all this kind of grooves on the legs and the arms and the body, and just how flexible this whole unit is. And then the mouse here, it can actually open up kind of like where in the episode 1 where Shinji goes into berserk mode. You kind of have that option to make Eva-01 a berserker instead. And lastly, here's a great image of the difference between an RG and an HG model from Bandai. And thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed watching that video, please hit that subscribe button so that you can actually follow along when I upload new videos.